Welcome back to In the Know with Lolo Knows. I am your host, Lolo, and today we have a very, very, very special guest, an incredible DJ, a producer, a pianist, and my friend, Ian Mariano. Ian has been a pivotal figure in the Cleveland electronic music scene and is one of the founding members of the legendary The Church, a residency at the legendary Metropolis nightclub. Ian, welcome to the show.
Well, hello.
Hi. We've been wanting to have this conversation, and I'm so happy because you've been coming out. You and Michael Metz, another, key figure in, Cleveland scene, come to the after brunch soiree at Lux, and it's been really wonderful getting to even know you even further, even though me and you've done a show together, and that was an experience. And I was so happy and proud to do a show with you. I respect you so much, and you're so sweet, and you're such a great drinking buddy. Cheers. I know you love your bourbon on your bourbon on the rocks.
It's
I
it's
love bourbon on the rocks too,
it's
but there's
whiskey.
a
It's
time and
whiskey.
place. But I do have a little Chardonnay today, so I'm gonna join you in on that. Don't mind if I do, don't mind if I do. Okay, so let's dive right in.
Mhm.
Can you share your early experiences in the Cleveland electronic music scene and what drew you to it?
Well, not to get anybody in trouble, but I'd been in bands, electronic music bands, like industrial, techno pop, and things like that. And I started getting into stuff that was coming out of Detroit. And then I met up with some people. We'd go out to like the old Euphoria and things like that. And then I met up with Scott Forbush. I didn't know him at the time, at a club in Akron called the 1027. And I had no desire to be a DJ at the time. I didn't, whatever. And then like he had great music, and I was that kid that would come up and request shit that came out like a week before, and he had it. So I'm like, oh, can I help out anyway? He said, can you do lights? And I had done lighting in high school and things like that. So I started doing lights for him. And then, one day, he didn't make it to the club. And I theoretically knew what was going on because I'd been in recording studios and I saw what he was doing and I knew the music. And the owner's like, well, there's a snowstorm. Can you do this? I'm like, sure. And so the very first time I ever DJ'd was in public in front of people. And then, after a while, he was like, whoa, hey, okay, so we've got this guy, Scott Lucci, who's opening up a club called Metropolis, warehouse style club in the flats of Cleveland. And I'd already been going to like, places like Coconuts and other places. Again, not to get anybody in trouble, but it was a different time. And it was really poppy. There wasn't really super underground stuff until you went to like Nine of Clubs, which was kind of industrial. And then I was hearing like Rob Sherwood and a few other people starting to play the music that I was really into.
Yeah.
And that's my real introduction into the Cleveland electronic scene, aside from being in bands. Because like I'd been in a band called Piper Blue, and we played with like the Exotic Birds and some other people. And that's, and Trent Reznor was part of Exotic Birds, and I met Andy, the drummer and singer there, and that was my introduction to like the you would call like electronic, but then there was like this other music coming in from like Detroit, Chicago, New York, and
Yes.
of course New York, the tracky house stuff I was super getting into. And then let's say that's how it started.
I mean, okay, so you said New York, the New York
Yeah.
scene. I know you've had some time in New York. Tell me about that. And when was that? This was the early 90s, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, I mean, I was born in Jersey City, and like and when I was 2 weeks old, my parents took me to Rockefeller Center, and of course I don't remember it, but to see the Christmas tree. And then my family moved around from New York to Ohio a bit and then settled in Ohio when I was maybe in fifth or sixth grade. And then at any chance I got, I would come back to New York. So like if my dad had a medical conference or something like that, or if it was just a family trip, or we're going to see family in Jersey, and then we would just go up to New York City. And as I got older and was able to travel on my own, getting up towards like the late 80s, the early 90s, I would just drive and go and like hang out like at Groove, hang out at Satellite, go to the Limelight, go to the
Yes, the
Lower East Side.
limelight.
Lower East Side was my jam, man.
Let
Like,
me
oh,
tell you something. We are so blessed that you and I got to party at the Limelight. What a place.
oh my
I
God.
mean, what?
I mean, yeah, right. Every like it was communion on Sunday nights,
Oh,
right? Like communion on Sunday nights was like the goth night. And like what people don't understand about like true goth stuff that was happening in New York, it wasn't just black clothing.
no,
It was beautiful.
I know
And
it really
then and
was.
then right, like so communion on Sunday nights in a church,
In a
like
church with
in
that
a
beautiful
church.
red door, that iconic, beautiful arched red door.
And there's so many rooms in there, you get lost. And you get lost anyway if you were doing things. But
Yes.
and then all of a sudden they started to do like when the UK stuff started coming back here because we started some stuff, the UK brought it back here, and like the people like the Storm Rave crew and all these people started doing stuff there. It was just like you go there and it was just a madhouse and it was like fantastic. And like
And
the
in
whole
such a good way, though, a madhouse in the best possible way.
exactly.
It was a
And
very freeing time. There wasn't a lot of outside distraction.
nope,
When
nope.
you went into the club, there were no, even though there were, cell phones in those days, but they were big. Nobody was thinking about being on their cell phone in a nightclub.
No, no, no,
We
no.
went over there. We went out to escape and to dance and to be.
And that was it, right? Like so, like all the different parties and things, like I partied under the Brooklyn Bridge with Lenny D and people, and Lower East Side, like St. Mark's Place, like all that like vibe was so cool. And what was really interesting is like once we had Metropolis going, we had our first really big person there was Jeff Mills. It was the first time we had lasers in the place. And then pretty
Oh,
soon
Jeff
after,
Mills.
yeah, pretty soon
Oh,
after, pretty soon after, we started getting people in like Repeat and Lenny D, Josh Wink and things. So there was a really big like New York Cleveland connection in the
mhm.
day in the 90s. Like New York dancers would come to Cleveland,
Danny
Cleveland,
Tenaglia.
Danny Tenaglia. We had Danny and we had Frankie.
Yep.
We had CC Peniston, we had Frankie, um we had it's hard to remember how many people we
Like
had. We had
we had
Woody.
good taste back then, honey. It never left us.
It's
It's
fun.
never
It's fun.
left us.
And
It's
it's fun because
evolved.
yeah,
And I
right.
love where the music just seems like there. Listen, I always believe that a great song is forever, no
Yes.
matter what. If it pierces your soul, there's generations getting ready to pierce, and it's gonna make you
Yeah.
fall in love again. And that's what I love about this music, and I love about the culture of dance music and the spirit of
Yes.
dance music, the spirit of the club, the spirit of feeling.
Yeah, and like the spirit of togetherness, like
Yes.
we did like I was fortunate to be in part of the behind the scenes of the scene while being part of the scene. So it's like, yeah, I was doing the lights, I was producing, I was DJing, but I got to do things like, all right, well, I'm opening up for Frankie Knuckles. I'm opening up for Danny Tenaglia. I'm opening
Oh
up
my
for
goodness.
Jeff.
Tell me about Frankie real quick,
Oh.
please.
So we had him on like the Sunday night was, definitely the church. It was the rave scene, right? But like Saturday nights were more of a deep house sort of vibe and more house vibe. And
Hmm.
so at the time, Tim Richardson, who was the DJ resident there on Saturday nights, brought in Frankie, right?
Oh my goodness.
So, I was playing records, Frankie comes up, he was the sweetest guy. Um, and it was such a privilege to do lights for him after like playing and then jumping onto lights. I said, I'm going to do lights for you. He's like, that's cool. And then I just watched him. It was three turntables, three 1200s with a Yuri rotary mixer, and he was just so happy to just play music. And at the time, the DJ booth was up, so you didn't see people. It was like
Hmm.
you looked down on the dance floor. Frankie's up there, and I'm looking at him, and he's like, "I got something." I'm like, "What?" He's like, "I just did this remix," and he's like, "I think you know this song," and
Mm.
he put it. It was a white label. He put it on the thing, and it was right when he did the remix of Michael Jackson's "Remember the Time."
Oh, nah. Oh,
Yeah. Uh-huh. And then he proceeded to slay on three turntables
I just got chills.
the whole time, just bouncing, looking at me, looking at the crowd, seeing the lights, looking at his records. It was just amazing. I can't trade these experiences
Oh,
for anything because if I hadn't been around some of these folks, I wouldn't be the producer or DJ I am today because it's like the attitude was like pure joy, right? And the love of the music and just grooving. And then I had a similar experience with Danny Tenaglia, like
I love
he
Danny.
Danny's awesome. And like I picked him up from the airport. It was for another Saturday night. I picked him up from Hopkins and I took him to his hotel and I picked him up and I took him to Tower City. We hung out. He went to go buy shoes, and then we're sitting around like by the fountain in Tower City, and he's like, I think I bought the wrong size shoes. He's like, do you like low top Converse? I'm like, sure. He hands me these red low top Converse, like exactly my size. I'm like, well, that was a nice accident. And then that night we're again, playing, and then he goes on and just an education of music. Like it wasn't just house, it was like multi-genre. Like he was playing some groovy house, and all of a sudden he's into Depeche Mode, and I'm like, whoa.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden it's and then all of a sudden the Nitzareb and like join in the chant. Like,
Man, that man has quite literally influenced my own
whew.
style over the years. It's one of the reasons why, I just fell in love. Him and Victor Calderon,
Oh,
Oscar G, all
yeah,
those
yeah.
guys, you know what I mean? Like all of
It
those
amazing.
guys, really influence like my own style.
Yeah. And
Hardcore.
Danny taught me like you don't have to stick with one genre as long as you've got the right song at the right time, beats the
Hmm.
best mix every time.
Hmm.
And when you're first starting out, like I started out in front of people and I'd never had equipment. So every time I played out when I started out was in front of people. Like that first night with that snowstorm, at 10:27, like it was in front of people. And yeah, yeah, of course, I theoretically knew what was going on, but yeah, no, I sucked. But you learn, right? You learn, and then you learn from people. Like when we had Jeff Mills there, he was rocking three turntables. I had no idea what was going on. No idea how was that even possible? And then just seeing how, that was techno, and then there was like Knuckles and Tenaglia with house
That
and
is amazing.
multi-genre.
The
And then just
fact that
watching
they
people.
were all here, you know what I mean,
Yeah.
says a lot about our scene. So let's talk
Yeah.
about
Yeah. Yeah.
I do know what happened. The Rave Act is what happened.
Yeah.
That kind of interrupted a lot of things and
Good.
made it and closed down that beautiful, most amazing, one of the most amazing venues Cleveland's ever seen, which was Metropolis. I like Metropolis to Wish. Wish was another space
Uh-huh.
that was like
Ish.
very,
Love that spot. I
it
love
was,
that spot.
there's just no other place in this whole area like it. And it was just it was really a magical spot too.
Yeah.
And no, I'm glad that I lived to be able to, experience that. And and we both have a mutual, Michael Metz, who
Yeah.
played at Wish and still has some amazing. I've been listening to some of his stuff that he's recorded at Wish. The fact that he has it is like a chef's kiss because it's
Yeah.
even that good.
Yeah. I mean, like, him and we go way back, of course.
Yes.
And like, but like, I keep pushing him like and he saved his thing. I think it's on OneDrive where his mixes are. And I'm glad he did it because like he used to release these things on cassette, but then he also recorded his live sets, which not a lot of people were doing at the time. Well, at least I wasn't. Some people did, but like, and then they just don't upload it or they don't do anything. So I'm really glad that there's this whole archive of his stuff because
Yes,
when he goes deep, it's just amazing. Like
it
he's
is.
so good, right? And just a pleasure knowing him. And we see him out. He says he's not DJing anymore. We'll see if we can convince him.
Yeah. I asked him to, but I just think sometimes you just kind of look at what you had and you're okay with that. Like he
Yeah,
had an incredible journey in it, let me
it's
tell you.
true.
And
Yeah.
and he really did DJ at the best time, the best possible freaking time.
Yeah, I mean,
Honestly, those moments you can't even get back anymore. And they're not, you think it's the same, but it's really not.
it isn't. I mean, and going back to what you said about the Rave Act, like, getting up to the late 90s, early 2000s, yeah, it was so big and people didn't know how to handle it. And then all of a sudden, you've got like England cracking down on things, and you've got like, oh, the all shit, all this stuff happened with Michael Alec and folks. Um, and then and then the mayor's like, no, we're gonna get this down. And then you got Giuliani who did the cabaret frickin' laws in New York where you had to get a license for anything more than like whatever 10 people dancing or some crap like that. That really put a big damper on like the scene. And we haven't recovered in Cleveland, but we are still strong with the underground. Like you're
Yeah.
doing it, I'm doing it. A bunch of other people are still pushing it out there. Will it ever get back to the big nightclub scene in Cleveland? I don't know. You know, that remains to be seen. I mean, there is Ford, but like that's a whole different kind of commercial vibe. Whereas like what was happening, in at Metropolis and Wish and a couple other places was like truly about the music. You
Yeah.
went there and you heard things that you wouldn't, you're not requesting anything. You're going there, you're just dancing and vibing. People would come in suits on Sunday night at Metropolis and they would lose their shit because there's this 2,000, 3,000 people in the room.
I know.
Nobody knew what the
That
music.
place is,
And even at Wish too, like people would come in there and be like, "What is this?"
I'm going to tell you something. I've been in where the Metropolis is at since probably
Mm.
in the last, I would have to say it's been within the last 12 years. My really dear friend, she got married and they were going to the people at that time who had access to it, the building. She had her wedding there,
Wow.
like her reception, thing. And it was grand, but even that, there was some red tape there, with the
Yeah.
city, with that building, what it represented. But it was honestly some of the best times I've ever had here in Cleveland.
Oh man.
Like honestly, there's nothing else like it. They will never see that ever
No,
again. And
it's hard.
and the city doesn't want it
No,
at all open. Like it's just there. And what a waste because it's such an incredible
the space.
place. It
It
is
like
the perfect place.
yeah, I mean like I remember when we were getting ready to open the place. So like Scott Lucci and was going to open it. So he approached Scott Forbush and myself to be the Sunday night residents and a couple other people like Bill Palachek and Tim Richardson to do Friday, Saturday nights. But even before we opened, I remember going in there and like when they were putting up the mezzanines, with those railings, those
Mhm.
steel railings,
Mhm.
and I helped grind some of it down like to make it, and then also helped Chip Bullock who did the initial lighting um help with the initial lighting. I helped him hang some of the original lighting up there, and then Jim Salopek and his team uh doing the sound, right? Like so we were all in. It was because we wanted to do it, right? And then it opened and it then, it became crazy. Not crazy, but like it became just kind of this thing. The tagline was somewhere between New York and LA.
Mhm.
And but it was like a destination. People would come from all over the country just to come to Metropolis, which it was like, wow. I mean,
Want to
like,
know what? That club reminds me of what the Radius is now in Chicago.
hmm,
It's exactly what, if anybody that doesn't know what the Metropolis is, it was our Radius here in Cleveland. How long's that place been around?
ooh, uh, let's
80s,
see,
90s to early 2000?
91 to I think about 2004, 2005, I think. I was
Yeah.
gone. I mean, I went back to New York
Yeah.
early 2000s. So, and I was there, I was away for 20 years and I came back July of 2020. And yeah, I mean, what really happened was like I wanted to go home to New York. And I was starting to feel like the city wasn't helping, right? The people were great. Like, all of us were great, but I wanted to go back. And initially when I went back to New York, it was cool. I was playing Lower East Side and doing these gigs like it's at like Idlewild and Sex and St. Mark's Place, and then Giuliani. So like, and that was just kind of like disheartening because it was like not just Cleveland, not just New York, but a bunch of other places got shut down.
I
And
know. Isn't that something?
oh, but to Cleveland's credit and to a lot of people's credit, perseverance and just love of the music, and I
Amen.
really I'm really happy with where we're at here because there's the same, not the same people, but even new blood. They see what we've done and they're just trying to do it a different way. And we're trying to adapt too. And I think it's great. And I think it's great that like the people are starting to recognize that, whoa, there has been, and always has been like talent in Cleveland.
Yeah.
And
I've been a
yeah,
part of the whole Cleveland nightlife scene since 95.
yeah, and it's just like and people are like, "Whoa, that came out of Cleveland?" I'm like, "Well, yeah, it did."
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like some great people, I real feel very fortunate that like for a while there, I got really jaded with the music industry, so I stopped. I mean, I had a record label, but then I had some really bad proposals from distributors, and I said, I'm just no." And
Mhm.
then I came back here and I just was for, whatever, my an acquaintance, I said, "Hey, Quentin, can I send you something?" He's like, "Yeah, I'll release that." Because like I sent him something and he said, "I'll release it." And I said, "Well, okay, what are the terms?" And he had really great terms. He's got worldwide distribution. And so I started releasing music commercially again. And then he's like, "I want more Cleveland artists." So he's booked Ricky, he's booked, Randy
That's Ricky
Mazzeo.
Spanish. You got to do first and
That's
last names on this platform.
oh yeah. I mean, I know you, so I'm like, "Hey, you're Ricky." You know Ricky, that guy,
That's
Ricky.
right. That
You
Spanish
know,
guy.
that's yeah. And then Chris Pauls and I have known each other for years, and he's got music out there. Like,
Yes, he does.
Chris was the one that said, "Hey, send something to Quentin," and I'm like, "Okay." And then you've done some music, which I love, love,
Thank
love.
you.
You
Thank
know,
you.
I
Thank
even
you. That was a long time coming, honey.
And like even last night, I mean, I played "What's That Sound?" Like last night, it was
Oh,
it was
good.
a little
I love,
party of
that track. I'm so happy that, that track did well.
Yeah,
and I was feeling it too. So I'm glad a lot of other people were feeling it.
man, like,
That was definitely something I did not expect to happen, and that happened.
which is, and I mean, you did it. And on top of like everything else you do, I mean, I really admire that you're art forward, right? I mean, yes, you're producing, you're DJing, but you're always art forward. And
Yes,
that's the attitude. Like I'm the same way. And like
yes,
I happen to be music forward, but I also like design and I carry this into my work because everything that you do can influence what you do as your job or your career, your hobby. I don't look at it as my career as like, ooh, it's 9 to 5, blah blah blah. I look at what I've experienced in my life, failures and successes, and I can apply that to my work, which is essentially consulting, technology. And the music industry has taught me a lot about how to weather some of this stuff. And that's why I'm still at it. And that's why a lot of people are still at it is because we love it and we love this town. I mean, Cleveland's awesome. I mean, yeah, yes, I'm a New Yorker, but like
Cleveland's not only awesome, but navigating, let me just say, and I'm going to be honest, navigating this scene was a little tricky, especially with someone who has, multifaceted like I am. I'm kind of like, I don't just stick to one room, if that
right.
makes sense.
Oh, totally, totally.
So like, I'm always a curious person, and I love different, different elements and stretching my being, in every room that I walk in,
Yeah.
even whether or not it's something that I I'm always open to a new experience,
Heard.
because that's when a lot of stuff blossoms for me artistically.
Yeah, that's why you can't. I mean, there are people that are like purists in a genre. I'm not. Like I grew up, with classical music and,
I
my
love
dad
that.
played
The
Sinatra.
piano's my favorite. Ian, you can play me the piano anytime you want.
But like, eh, yeah, right now, like, yeah, I'm known as like the Cleveland techno guy, right? Like playing techno, like proper. I don't want to call it proper, but like techno. But when people come out and they hear me play house, they're like, "What? What?" Or drum and bass or
Mhm.
an 80s night, right? Well, I was born in 69, so like, yeah, I kind of like know what the 80s were all about because I was a teenager in the 80s. So, there you
One of
go.
my favorite summertime songs is by Brian Adams, Summer of 69. And if nobody knows that track, I'm putting you down today. Listen to
Well, I
it.
mean, I mean, like again, with any sort of art form, if you lock yourself into one thing, you lock yourself off from the experience, which is why I loved working, in high school with the theater group, which is why I loved hanging, like the physical nature of hanging and designing lighting, not just for nightclubs, but I did a little bit at SeaWorld when it was open, just to put it out there. Um, had all access to SeaWorld, got to see, the whales and their thing and the dolphins. But also too, it's like you listen to like what people are doing. Like people like automatically shut down certain genres of music. I'm like, no, 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 no. Don't do that. Like just listen because sometimes you'll be quite surprised, right? So like my kid, he likes what I do, but it's a little bit removed because he's of that younger generation where it's more bite-sized. So he's been listening to stuff that has elements of like drum and bass and funk. And then he hears what I do and he's like, oh, I heard, wait, oh, that could be used in like something like that. And I'm like, okay. I tend to like produce longer tracks, right? Except if it's like drum and bass or something, then it's like, 3, 4 minutes. But like, um, but to keep it like interesting for myself, I need to listen to a lot of music, right? I need to look at a lot of visual things. I need to see different kind of way people are putting design together, and not just design visually, but design on paper, like words, like read. I like to read. I like to like listen to all the different things that I just kind of randomly just jump onto, and I like to look at systems.
Like in
I
my
like
music, I'm always attracted to a very strong vocal with the
mm,
message because I love writing spoken word.
yeah, got it. And I like poetry. I mean, I haven't been really writing a lot of it, but when I was in bands and I would do write, it always come from a poem from that, or I'd find music come out of me because of the words, or I'd find my music and then I'd be like, oh, these words kind of fit that. And then it's kind of like looking at even with my day job, my work,
Yeah.
it's it's like I get so interested in how the systems of things are put together and how do I help that system and how do I get other people to feel that sort of you can be divergent thought. You can have these things. And I try to approach that with pretty much everything. And especially like like what we went through the scene, it was just basically acceptance that you can create
Hmm.
and you can love and create and just be supportive. And that was like the whole vibe, right? Yeah, there are elements that were kind of like shady, but like for the most part, people were there to have the experience, either to create it or to receive it, or to help generate both, right? Like,
I'm gonna be honest, and maybe it's just me because I've lived through so many wonderful times, and I do have fun. Don't get me wrong. I don't want anybody to take this out of context. But sometimes I feel bored.
that's the human condition, right? You know,
And it's just like, and that's the other side of it. When
yeah,
you in other, and I'm not taking away from anybody else's experience, but when and maybe that's just me, and I'm just preface to feel, this is just my personal experience, because honestly, to me, it was all about connection with your community and true dancing and letting go. And I don't see a lot of that.
yeah, I mean, you see some genesis of that, you see some sparks of that, and there are a few people that genuinely, I see that are trying to promote that, but it is hard. I mean, like we all have our things that we have to do in life.
There's so many to me now because I party with everybody. So I kind of feel like there's a lot of walls up, lots of walls building up, a lot on a lot of fronts because a lot of people have been,
Hurt,
wronged
burnt.
and
Yeah.
burned along the way. And, the trust barriers go down and we're supposed to be about plur and what's up? What's going on?
Now here we are like
Like seriously,
30 years
doesn't feel
on.
like that a lot. I'm
It
just
doesn't.
saying.
Yeah, well, people just have to take a step back and take a look at the original idea was so like pure.
Mhm.
The problem with that is over time that gets, of course, eroded, commercialism, blah, blah, blah. And then people get older, they get more cynical, and you get hurt. You get hurt by people in the scene, you get hurt from people without. You get bad deals with what with distribution companies get bad deals with your art, like, and you get jaded.
Yeah.
And you still have to, I mean, I see you still have hope, and that's the thing. It's hard though. I mean, like, and I can see where a little certain level of boredom comes in because you're like, okay, well, now I gotta produce this thing or I gotta remix this thing. And I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna just take a step back, just reset my mind a little bit to be like, all right, it's not a job to do this. It's being creative.
I
And
know, creative, I'm never bored in.
but
Ever.
yeah, but you
I'm
have to go
talking
back.
about being in the party scene
Yeah,
itself.
it can get tedious.
You know what
You
I'm saying? Like I'm
don't
supposed to
understand
be
all the
there letting loose, having a good time. Like
yeah. I mean, I was
what's up
away.
like this?
I was
Like,
away from this. Yeah, I was away from Cleveland for 20 years, right? So you come jumping back in, and they're like, "Whoa, yo, hey, Ian, come join this crew." I'm like, "What? What are you talking about?" I just want to know what's going on. I'm just trying to see the landscape of this thing. I don't want the pressure of having to deal with the 20 years of baggage that people have had that I don't know about, right?
oh, of course, of
Right?
course.
But I want to help, I want to help people go forward. Like, yeah, you can be like, what is it, the ancient Chinese doll, 8 steps forward, 7 steps back, but you're still 1 step forward, right? There's always going to be
I'm thinking about that Paula Abdul song now.
Yeah, I mean, but like, there's always going to be, there's always going to be tension. There's always going to be politics. It's, it's like how graceful you handle that, right? You can either get really depressed about it.
Hmm.
You can get really like blasé about it, and then blasé, you start to do sloppy things. I try to like, as much as I can, be aware, but like not stick my stick in a hornet's nest, And
You know what? Here's the thing. It's just like I think with any family and any energy dynamic, sure, there's always going to be some
it's
friction.
a family.
There's
You're
always
right.
going to be
Right.
some miscommunication, some misunderstanding, some this, some
It's a
that.
family.
Anytime when energies converge and they're not always aligned,
It's a family.
that's the friction.
It's a family, right? I mean, this the whole thing
Family.
is a
We
family. And
are a
like
family.
we had our frictions back in the day. I mean, like initially when we did Metropolis and we're doing the church, an alternate night was going on at Aqualon, which was Rob Sherwood and Mike Philly. And there was like this rivalry that was like happening. And then I sat down with Scott one night and I'm like, listen, we need, because this is something brand new. There's something great that would be great for the Cleveland music scene. I said, Scott, we need to let's talk to Rob and Mike. Let's bring them in to the church, right? Because that would unify the scene. So we talked and like so Sunday night we're like, okay, so because initially we were equal sort of like Aquilon and and Metropolis Church Sunday nights were okay. They were equal, right? It was the same thing. Like same number of people, like people were just going out, and then suddenly, for some reason, Metropolis started getting more and more numbers. And we were starting to play more and more of the stuff coming out of Europe at the time and more stuff coming out of like Detroit. And then we started getting more numbers, and I'm like, this could become a problem because it's going to be divisive. And Scott and I talked about this, like divisive for the scene. And they're really good at what they do. We're really good at what we do. Why don't we just come together? And so we did. And so then that's when the church really became the church. It is when we brought in Mike Philly and Rob Sherwood. Rob Sherwood, you know, um, it's just like it was amazing because like there were four of us, right? It was like Scott was like the hardcore guy. I was more the techno trancey guy. Sherwood was the house guy. Philly was like the breaks early jungle guy. So we had like the whole
Dude, I want that. I want
spectrum.
that collective. Man, we need to come up with a show and do that shit, man.
And
What
it
the
was
hell?
it was good.
We
And
need to
it
do like a
and it
remake
evolved.
of a show like that with all those genres all up
And
and
it evolved. I mean, like initially
I'll be down with that.
we had our like differences, but we put them as and we still did during the thing. That's the thing. It was a family, right? We
Right.
still had differences in opinions and our
Hmm.
our cliques or whatever, but we came together on Sunday night and did something that was beyond just us, right? And it showed. And it showed like for bringing people in and they're like, "Wow, Cleveland, you've got this thing. Like, what is this thing?" And it was and what was great is like we started to be able to have raves here in Cleveland where it was just Cleveland artists and people would just jam the place because initially it was like, oh, we'd bring out of town people, blah blah blah, and Brian
There's
Conti, to
always been
his
that
credit.
Pittsburgh. There's always been that Pittsburgh connection too, correct?
Yeah, well,
And Columbus,
Metropole was our sister, like kind of our sister
the
club. So,
Metropole. Shit!
right, like we used to go down there. Like I would play down
Oh
there,
my goodness.
Scott would play down there, and then we'd bring people up from Metropole, to play up here. And like that was kind of like,
Listen, listen. My
wow, Metropole.
hold on, wait. Hold on.
I just brought that up in your head.
Oh Lord. That okay, the Metropole. You know
Metropole.
how high the prom, the after prom? My after prom was at Metropole.
Oh, oh my God. And the thing is, like, okay, so Metropole was one of the clubs that was done through what was called McFadden Ventures. They used to open up nightclubs like in Houston and Pittsburgh and Chicago and things like that. Metropole was like one of their warehouse industrial like design things. So that's where kind of Lucci, I think, got his inspiration was from Metropole to open up Metropolis. And
Wow.
they had the
You
same,
know
they had
what?
the
That
same,
makes sense. They're both in warehouses.
yes, right?
Both the same vibe and everything. Man,
And like, yeah, and then like the DJ booths were also up in the air somewhere.
yes.
They had the three turntables with a Yuri rotary mixer, right?
Yes.
But I loved playing on that. I mean, it was the hardest thing to learn on, but it made you a better DJ
Yeah. Yes, it does.
nowadays it's
Yes,
really
it
easy to
does. Yes, it does.
it's easy to EQ individual channels. On that thing you could not, right? So and I remember playing a bunch of parties down there, a couple events, and like one of my mo favorite memories is this is the only time I've not been billed by my real name, right? It was a party called Lucky Charms at Metropole, and they put me on as DJ Mindfuck. And I'm like, yeah. And the person that designed the flyer for that was none other than our friend, Mr. Tic Tac. And the other person, one of the other people that was playing on there was a very early Diesel Boy, right? So I met Diesel Boy for the first time at Metropole. He opened for me, and he's playing like this is before he was like super into like drum and bass. He was playing kind of like hardcore, not quite gabber at the time, and like just it was great. It was a great time. I mean, I've had great times, in Metropole, and there's been some really fuzzy times going back and forth between Metropole, like Pittsburgh and Cleveland, because yeah, it's a drive. And if you don't stay the night, then you're kind of have to navigate that. Yeah,
Listen, I
interesting.
got to get to a couple more of these questions and we
Okay,
can't
yeah,
go
yeah,
over those 30 minutes. So we're going to be finishing this off with a few more. I'm going to fire off some few questions. So I need to ask you this so we can get down to the bottom. There has been a positive shift as of recently of female DJs and producers are gaining more visibility and recognition. And it's great to see more women taking the stage and making their mark. So I'm curious, have you seen the representation of female DJs and artists change in the Cleveland scene? And you know, you care to
yeah.
name any?
It is happening. It is happening, right? Like I wish there'd be more of it, right? And I like that there's more coming out. So like Jenna Friend has been working on it and starting to play out. Of course you and like a Villas and Bass Drip and a bunch of other people, right? It's great to see. There have been female DJs in Cleveland. There's Robin Harris, there was Alyssa, right? But that those were like the two people.
Jay
Like,
Lee. Right, exactly. That's what I'm saying. So
yeah.
when I came in, this is the thing. I never said I'm gonna set the record straight for anybody who may even whatever. I never set off to be a DJ ever. Okay. Matter of fact, it was really more of a freaking challenge because you guys do know who I live with. I'm just saying, the Spanish ain't no joke.
No,
So,
he,
and,
yeah,
he has been like one of my mentors. So, like, it was more like more of a challenge than anything than I was going to set this to do. When I felt confident, I'm like, oh, this actually feels very natural to me. Even though my earlier like education and the whole DJ has been more of being a party goer, being
yeah,
involved in the
yeah.
scene in every aspect, you know what I mean? Being a part of the community, you know what I mean? Trying, doing, carrying records in the clubs for the DJs, when, I was even on that side of the,
Yeah.
like for me, it was about dancing and feeling the vibes and, about becoming the part of the party. I was the most important part of the party. I was the dancer. I was a true dancer to the
Yeah.
whole craft from early disco to hip hop to electronic music. You know what I mean? So like all of those things played a pivotal role in even me being here. And
Mm.
being the first Afro Latina in the house music
In Cleveland,
in
in Akron,
Cleveland,
in Akron.
in Cleveland and Akron.
So my thing is
Here's the
like
thing,
there
because
needs,
and here's the thing, a lot of people, get that confused because female DJs, yes, they're coming out, but a lot of them haven't declared a genre. For me, when people ask me who I am a house music DJ and I'm a house music producer. You know what I
yeah,
mean? If I want to
yeah,
dabble in some techno, it doesn't mean I'm a techno producer. It's going to mean I'm producing a techno track. You know what I mean? Like I
yeah.
am at the core house.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's like, yeah, you've got a sense of your identity as a woman, as a strong woman, and as like your art forward and DJing is part of that. But
Mhm.
you have a sense of where you want to go. Now, there are a few people that have come out like DJs, like female DJs, younger that do have a sense of identity, and then there are others that are just kind of finding their way. And my advice to them is just play what you love. Doesn't
Exactly.
matter what genre, it will find you, right? Like techno found me. Like I was super like into, the 80s and New Order and Pet Shop Boys and Front 242 and just Skinny Puppy. And then house and techno found me. And then eventually drum and bass found me pretty quick, you right? But I'd already like figured out like what I liked. And it takes time. Just be patient with yourself and listen to what yourself is saying. Now, and let's all encourage the young women to do this, right?
Mhm.
Like to embrace that, hey, give them the help, show them the skills, right? You can
Here's the
only,
thing too. For me though, I think it also helps when you're just becoming at one with the culture.
yeah.
Think the culture is being
Totally.
left out of it when everybody's just trying to just jump on stage and play their favorite songs
No,
or their records. And it's not about
feel the culture.
that. It's about the culture and it's about
Yeah.
dancing. It's about being a part of
Yeah.
this whole grand scheme
Right.
of
Don't
blur.
chase. Yeah, yeah, Plur. I mean, like it's fine to try to promote yourself. That's totally, absolutely great. But you also have to step back and be part of the scene that you're in, right? Like you have to be part of it. Live in the scene, right? Like go to these things. Don't just show up 15 minutes before you're going on and then
Right.
leave. Show up early. I'm notorious for showing up like as things are opening up and staying there and knowing the context because I want to, if I'm playing that night, I want to know what's been going on, the history.
Not
Now,
just that. Why
dancing.
not just, here's the thing that makes me feel weird about it all. Don't you all like to actually party anymore?
Yeah,
Are you
right.
just there to be seen?
And I think it also
Yeah,
has to do
I
with kind of
said
like
it. I said it.
said it. It's the like culture. It's the, TikTok, I'm showing this crazy thing for 5 minutes or less or whatever. They're 30 seconds or whatever. But like I like to know the vibe. I want to see people. Like I like the day parties that go on, right? Like at the lake, that Derek and Chris throw, sometimes Derek Post and Chris Pulse and other people throw, where and they'll just have a people doing yoga or and then people playing house and then people playing live music. And it's not totally rave culture, but it is kind of rave culture because it's just people coming together. It's
They
like you
really do have an amazing thing going on. I'm
right.
so honestly, I'm just so proud to even just. I love the fact that I'm doing even a show with Chris Pauls.
And that is an amazing show because like people are just hanging out after brunch
It's a
and
brunch. It's our brunch show. It's our brunch party. Let's get
yes,
the shows out of the thing. It's not a show.
it's not a
We are
show. It's just kind of like
partying.
you're
Okay, we
partying.
are we are we are joining in dance and party. I want people
Yeah,
to move their body. It's healthy.
yeah, and you got to move, right? You got to
You gotta
like
move.
if I'm writing music, it depends on the kind of music, but like if I'm writing something ambient, yeah, I'm probably just going to sway a little bit. But like if I'm writing like finishing up my album, like I just finished an album, like if I can't just like jam and dance, then what am I writing, right? If I'm DJing and I don't want to wiggle my butt, what, Like if I'm playing house, I want to make sure that I am wiggling myself, right? Like if I'm playing techno, I want to be like into it, right? If I'm playing drum and bass, I'm gonna do my best interpretation of a, you know, Running Man or whatever. But you have to move. So, okay, go on, go
Okay.
on. You have more questions.
Yes, of course I do. There's so okay, hold on.
But anyhow,
I
there
want
you,
to know
yeah.
who are some of your early influences that influence like your music right now?
Oh wow. Like right now,
Yeah, because I honestly believe because this is just for me. I don't know. I've discovered that a lot of my early influences come through my own music.
so electronic music, I think Wendy Carlos and Tomita and Jean-Michel Jarre had a really big influence. And then also too, Herbie Hancock and
Oh,
Chick Corea, right? Those were like keyboard electronic influences. Also too, Tony Banks of Genesis, like,
yeah.
and just how they would push things, like, their early Genesis things when they would really play with time signatures and things like that. So those were my early influences. Um, and then of course, like Juan Atkins and those folks. But the thing is, like, we're all around the same age. It's just pretty funny. Like, I might even be older than some of these people that were my influences, but like it's crazy. Oh, Einstein's Neubauten, like when I heard them in 82, I was like, what the hell is this? You know, and of course all the like the classical things, like Mozart, of course. I liked uh Dvorak. So I have a lot of different influences because I grew up with classical piano, and then my when I was in end of high school, my piano teacher, who was Juilliard graduate, was taking private lessons. She said, "You know enough and about the classical music. We're going to break the rules. We're doing jazz now." And I thought, "Whoa, okay." And I already heard the album, but she pulled out Headhunter, Herbie Hancock, and I'm like, "Oh yeah, here we go."
Wow.
So, a lot of that, like, if that explains a little bit about where I come from musically. I'll always go back to a little bit of classical roots, and you can kind of hear it in my music, but like,
Now you can hear your music right now on, you're on all major platforms. So
yeah,
Ian Mariano on
yeah,
Spotify, on SoundCloud, on all the platforms.
yeah, Apple, Beatport, Tracksource, Juno, and like I said, I just finished a new album. Two singles have already been released off of it, which you can hear now. but this album is 8 tracks. Should be out in 5 or 6 weeks and on all platforms. Maybe if you've seen me play live or DJ, recently, you may have heard some of it, but it's not all four on the floor. There's some breaky stuff. There are things that change time signature, some ambient stuff. It's for you to discover.
Nice. Okay. Now, let me ask you this. How do you see the future? Here's the last question. How do you see the future of the Cleveland electronic music scene and what trends do you anticipate? And where do you see yourself going in it?
I see there are a lot of people that are trying to produce and do things and DJ. I see it very healthy, right? I see a bright future for it. Um, I think that my role in all of that is just to keep doing what I'm doing. And for other people like myself and yourself and like the old guard, as it were, is to I don't want to like say shape them, but to influence them in an attitude, right? And I'm very hopeful about that because I hear stuff people are doing. Like I get stuff from people in Cleveland that send me stuff. I'm like, well, that's really good, right? The thing that we have to do is provide our experience and say, and not to say you must do it this way, but like, have you thought about it?
Okay, hold on. Let me follow it up with this question. Hold on, because I did have that. What advice would you give to aspiring DJs and producers looking to make their mark in the local scene?
Um, be part of the scene. Listen, listen, listen. The best way you can become a better producer and DJ is to listen. Don't just throw your stuff out there. Listen to what people are doing. And if you're having issues of like, how do I do this? Don't just go to YouTube. Go to the people around you,
Yeah.
right? Like YouTube is full and TikTok is full of like people giving bad producer advice, right? The best producer is your ear, right?
Mhm.
And you need to fine tune that by listening to what you like and then stuff you don't like and then figure out like how can I get that to happen? And if you don't know how to make that happen, then ask. I mean, we're here. I mean, I'm willing. I won't give away the secrets all the way. If you're signed to, the label I'm on, sure. But, even with people, I'm like,
I
listen,
love that Cleveland has
listen.
its really like you guys are that label here right now. Intimate
Yeah.
venue recordings, right?
There's also Forshima, Jimmy Israel's thing.
Yeah.
There's a couple other people doing stuff.
Yeah. And
We've
thank
been, I
you
mean,
guys for supporting me. I see you guys liking my stuff. You know what I mean? Like
great
sending me
work.
your things and everything. Much mad respect. I love what you guys are doing and everything.
Yeah.
So,
But I mean, I think the thing is like, don't be afraid to reach out to us.
right.
You may think, oh my God, these guys are like legend. And I'm like, I'm about as much a legend as, the dude down the street that's selling whatever, right? But like a sandwich, like making a great sandwich. I mean, like I just want people to stay humble and just know there are things I don't know, right? I'll hear something and I'll be like, oh, how did you do that? Luckily, I can call people up and be like, oh, what did you do with that? Do the same thing. Like, how did you get that kick drum like that? I'm like, did you like use 5 kick drums? I'm like, no, that's two.
Hmm.
How did you fit that in there? I'm like, well, listen, use your ears, listen, but also follow what your heart is. It's like working on this album, I didn't want to do a straight up like techno thing, you know. Right. I wanted to just do my thing. Anyhow, more of that.
And
Just
I
reach out.
honestly, I cannot believe that this hour is already up because I'm
Wow.
like, oh my God, like seriously, me and you can talk like probably all night. But listen, thank you so much for coming on here. I really appreciate it. It's been wonderful talking with you. I'm gonna have to have you back for sure.
You want me to give you
I
give
will
you
definitely have you back for future talks. Don't worry. And that's a
yeah.
wrap for today's episode of In the Know with Lola Knows. Be sure to check out Ian Mariano's music and keep an eye out for his upcoming projects. And don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel for more great content. Join me every week for In the Know and Club Kid Dirty Disco every Thursday from 12 to 2 p.m. Also, sign up for my monthly newsletter at loloknows.com to stay updated on everything happening in the scene. Until next time, keep the music alive. Peace, love, and dance this out.